President Biden snapping at a reporter over doubts he's running for re-election after recent polling shows nearly two-thirds, 64% of Democrat voters, want somebody else on the ballot in 2024.
Mr. President, what's your message to Democrats who don't want you to run again?
They want me to run.
Two-thirds say they
Read
don't.
the polls. Read the polls, Jack. You guys are all the same. That poll showed that 92% of Democrats, if I ran, would vote for me.
A majority of Democrats say they don't want you to run again in 2024.
92% said if I did, they'd vote for me.
Oh, Mr. President, that's wrong about that particular polling number. We fact-checked your press secretary on it yesterday. The 92% actually refers to the number of Democrats who say they would vote for Biden in a hypothetical rematch between him and Donald Trump. That doesn't mean if there's another Democrat, somebody they like better, somebody they would actually want to have in office, that he could beat that Democrat. That's not what that means. A recent column asked the question, are Democrats stuck with Joe Biden in 2024? Joe Biden is at present a very unpopular president whose performance has discouraged his party's base. This is from the New York. That's a bad combination for Democrats who are facing a 2022 midterm election. If he stubbornly refuses to pack in, what then? Let's bring in Mollie Hemingway, Fox News contributor and editor-in-chief at The Federalist. Mollie, great to see you today, have you in focus. The president there doing exactly what they did at the lectern inside of the White House yesterday, just using the wrong numbers and hoping that Americans perhaps won't know the difference.
Well, he really is suffering from horrifically low poll numbers. But I think it's also true that many in corporate media are trying to control who the Democratic nominee is, like they did the last time around, and they're misdiagnosing the problem. Yes, Biden appears to be incompetent. He's done a very bad job as president. But his policies are really what are plaguing Democrats and why they are suffering so much nationwide. And his policies are very popular within the Democrat Party, but not outside of the Democratic Party. And so that's the issue that they need to grapple with as they have control over every sector of government. And they're instituting policies that people just don't like and that are causing real and actual harm to the country. I mean, what we're seeing with the numbers in terms of inflation, the economy, what's happening in global conflict, everything's going very poorly.
I don't know if you caught General Jack Keane earlier this hour, but he laid out a journey that this president has to pull off in the Middle East. That would be difficult no matter what their circumstances, but you got a lot cooking at home. Your quick thoughts on that, and then we'll move forward.
Well, just in general, this president has not done well with foreign policy. He's mismanaged the entire situation in Ukraine. His weakness was provocative there, now seeming to, get us into a war with no limit in terms of how much he says he's willing to spend or how much time we're willing to go there, all while things are very bad at home. I mean, there's a border at home that is being unwatched, even as Biden is focusing on Ukraine. The amount of money he's willing to spend on that war instead of focusing on domestic policy priorities, and even just the issue of taking his eye off the ball when dealing with China, which is the actual geopolitical adversary that any serious politician in either the Republican or Democrat Party should be caring about right now. And of course, going to the Middle East, he's desperate for help with energy, but it's his own policies, again, that he instituted on day one that have led to the energy crises that we're experiencing at home.
Let's get to this New York Times Siena congressional control. This is a Siena College poll, which shows 41% prefer the Democrats controlling Congress and 40% prefer the GOP in control. Those are really squeaky tight numbers, Mollie.
They're actually ridiculous numbers, and I think nobody actually believes that Democrats have an advantage in a general
Not even 1%.
No, I mean, that's just not true, and I think anyone who's being honest with themselves knows that's not true. It's a really good thing to think about that number when thinking about how seriously to take any data point in that poll. New York Times Siena frequently has very favorable polls for Democrats. They historically have, but this one is just, it's very difficult to take seriously anything they're saying, including about a Trump-Biden matchup when what we all know is that Democrats are facing horrific losses. Nobody thinks they're going to have a 1% advantage in the November elections. And if you do, you should get out of political punditry, probably.
All right. A war of words at the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on abortion yesterday. I don't know if you saw this, but Mollie, I can't wait to get your take on it. Missouri Senator Josh Hawley and a Berkeley law professor faced off over her characterization of who can get pregnant. Here it is.
You've referred to people with a capacity for pregnancy. Would that be women?
Many women, cis women, have the capacity for pregnancy. There are also trans men who are capable of pregnancy, as well as non-binary people who are capable of pregnancy.
So your view is that the core of this right then is about what?
So I want to recognize that your line of questioning is transphobic.
A Washington Examiner op-ed asked this question: when did it become transphobic to state scientific fact? Wait, don't answer that. That was a quote. Mollie?
Well, there really is something of a collision between the trans agenda and scientific reality. It is chilling to watch something like this. This is a professor who's in a position of authority, but it's not just her, but even corporations that will deplatform you if you speak honestly and accurately about the scientific reality of who is capable of pregnancy, what a woman is. And this is a political issue for Democrats because, as we have seen, they have to speak this way. And the vast majority of Americans who are normal look at this and it terrifies them to think about how if people will lie about who can get pregnant, what else will they lie about? And how will this affect, curriculum in schools, whether they're able to speak freely and honestly and accurately in their workplaces. And so insofar as Republicans can make this a campaign issue, which is difficult because so much of the media lie about this issue in particular, but insofar as they can, I think it'll further exacerbate problems for Democrats.
Mollie Hemingway, not to mention the fact that on the left they say they are for women's rights. I mean, we could go around in circles all day, but we can't. We're out of time. Good to see you. Thank you for watching the Faulkner Focus. Outnumbered next.